Breaking news now, in the former president's criminal hush money trial, a New York appeals court judge today denied his request to delay the trial, which is scheduled to begin 1 week from today. That decision only took the judge about 40 minutes after arguments concluded. And we're also learning what prospective jurors will be asked. Kara Scannell joins us now with details. Well, I just got this question here. It's really fascinating. What stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there are the basic questions about where do you live in the city? What do you do? Where do you get your news? But they're also trying to dig in and root out whether there's any bias here for or against Donald Trump. And they do this. So they've asked a number of questions of, have you ever worked for Trump, his campaign, his administration? Have you ever attended any rallies for Trump? Have you attended any rallies against Trump? And they're also asking if you belong to any fringe groups. They cite QAnon, the Proud Boys, but also Antifa. And one question they asked, which I thought was interesting and really specific to this case, is do you have any strong beliefs about whether a former president can be criminally charged in state court? Because there are these questions about immunity and about whether, you know, the politics of going after a former president. I mean, another thing that is interesting here, the judge made it clear there will be no questions about political contributions, who you voted for, or who you like, because as the judge has said and reminded the lawyers in his jury questionnaire, that the issue here is not to determine whether someone likes Trump or doesn't like Trump, but whether they can be fair and impartial.
So as of now, this trial is happening Monday.
Yeah, this is a go for now.
The judge has ruled against Trump.
Yeah, Trump's team went to the court today asking them to delay the trial so they can make a motion to challenge the venue, because they say New York has been saturated with this story. There's been the E. Jean Carroll trial. There's just a lot in the news. And they did a poll of 400 New Yorkers in which they say that a lot of people, more than half, said that they thought that Trump was guilty. Now, the prosecution opposed that, saying, you know, there's nowhere you can go to bring this case where people don't know about it. It's an international story. And they pushed back, and the judge, as you said, ruled pretty quickly afterwards, denying this. And, you know, will Trump's team try to make another go at the appeals court and another issue, you know, remains to be seen.
The former president's team, they made some motion about Stormy Daniels and a subpoena. What is that?
So they're still trying to enforce some subpoenas that they issued just last month. One is to Stormy Daniels. They want to know about any communications she's had about her documentary, any communications she's had with trial witnesses, including Michael Cohen. They've been on podcasts together. And also if she's had communications, what were they with E. Jean Carroll and two other women who have accused Trump of sexual assault. The reason that they argue they need this is because they're suggesting that there's some potential motive here for Stormy Daniels to give, as they put it, false testimony in order to profit off of this. So they're trying to see what they can learn. I
want to bring in two former federal prosecutors, Ellie Honig and Jessica Roth, who's now a professor at the Cardozo School of Law here in New York. Ellie, the jury questionnaire does, as Kara said, it talks about Proud Boys, QAnon, Boogaloo Boys, and Antifa.
It's a document. So first of all, jury selection is so crucial when you're a prosecutor or a defense lawyer. The stakes are so high. You let one bad juror through, you're going to regret that for a long time. And what the judge and the court is trying to do with this document is suss out any undue biases. And it really sort of breaks into a couple parts. One of them is just basically the basics, the biographical basics. What type of job do you do? What's your family situation? But then it gets into, without quite asking, how do you feel about Donald Trump? Do you love him or hate him? Asking a lot of proxies for that. For example, where do you get your news? Are you a member of any organizations? And then, as Kara said, have you been to a Trump rally? Are you part of any Trump email list? It also asks, have you been a part of any anti-Trump organization? Now, I don't know if Democrats count as anti-Trump, so there's a little bit of interpretation here. But what's going to happen is the jurors will fill out these questionnaires, and then it's sort of a guessing game. As a lawyer, you have a limited glimpse into a person, and based on their answers, you have to surmise, is this person going to be good for me or bad for me? The whole case is at stake.
Private attorneys will often have jury consultants who sort of analyze jurors. Do the state, do cities, do public prosecutors have that?
Well,
very
rarely. I mean, it's just not generally done. I don't have any insight into whether they're doing that here, but that would be very rare for the prosecutor.
What is the difference? Yeah. I mean, they're asking where people get their news, whether they've attended a Trump rally. The judge is, pointing out, and he's saying, there are no questions asking prospective jurors whom they voted for or intend to vote for, or whom they've made political contributions to. What's the difference if they're trying to get at it this other way?
Yeah, because what the judge is trying to make clear, and what the judge is going to be trying to make clear to the potential jurors, is that they're not being asked their political views, and they're not being asked which party, if any, they are affiliated
But they're
with.
sort of being asked that.
But what they're really trying to get at is, can you be a fair and impartial juror in this particular case? Will you decide the case based on the evidence and the arguments presented in court, as opposed to any bias that you bring in that you wouldn't be able to put aside? And this is just the beginning, these questions, because then there will be follow-up with jurors who say, for example, yes, I've attended a rally, right? Then there would be the opportunity for follow-up questions to try to get at whether their attendance at such a rally in some way indicates a bias that would impair their ability to be fair and impartial.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you're going to get a pretty good sense of who these people are, right? Even without coming out and asking. But imagine if someone says, I'm a member of the NRA, I've attended a Trump rally, and I primarily watch Fox News. Imagine if someone says, I'm a member of the ACLU, I've donated to anti-Trump efforts, and I primarily watch MSNBC. I mean, there will be examples of certainly the latter in Manhattan, maybe the former. So some jurors, you're going to have a pretty clear view, but then there's always those jurors who are cagey, and you have to just sort of use your instinct.
And, I mean, there's 7 days. Is there a chance for a venue change still?
I mean, at this point, before this judge today, I mean, she made the ruling, and that's the end of it at this court, at this level. I mean, could he go to the higher court of appeals? It's a possibility that he could, but there's going to be no more briefs before this first level of appeal.
But if he went to the higher court, that could still change something by next Monday.
In theory, but he doesn't have a right to have them hear this appeal. It would be discretionary on their part whether they would take it. And honestly, on the merits, it's so weak that I have a hard time imagining that they would consider it.
Yeah, he's going to lose on venue.
How long do you think jury selection is going to take?
So the estimates that we've heard are a week or more, but remember, they're going to have to go through each of these individually. I mean, you have to winnow down hundreds of people down to 12. I would guess over a week, maybe just over a week. It takes longer in state court than federal court. It's also important to know. In federal court, we used to pick juries in a day, 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, this is an extraordinary case for all the reasons we're familiar with. One thing I noted in the cover letter that the judge attached to the jury questionnaire is if I read it correctly, he's saying to the lawyers, for jurors who say, basically, I have a reason I cannot serve in this case, that he's going to essentially excuse them at that point without doing further inquiry, because that will really cut down the time.
That will speed it up, and that was a point of contention at one of the hearings. Trump's team initially wanted to poll everyone individually, and they had started to do that in the Trump Organization tax fraud trial a couple of years ago, and midway through changed their decision because it was taking too long. So that seemed to me they were looking to speed it up that way. The Trump Organization trial took about a week to seat the jury. The E. Jean Carroll, which was federal court, took 1 day. I think the estimate for this is 1 week, and they're only meeting 4 days that first week.
And has the former president's legal team given a sense of what their defense is here?
I think the main defense is attacking the credibility of some of these witnesses. Michael Cohen, he is the one person that can testify about the conversation he had with Donald Trump in the Oval Office about the reimbursement. We're not going to hear from Alan Weisselberg, who was part of that. We will hear from some other Trump Organization executives, but I think connecting Trump to the falsification is where they're probably going to focus a lot and try to distance Trump from that.
It's tough, though, to go after the credibility of Michael Cohen. I mean, there's plenty of reasons to go after the credibility of Michael Cohen, but when Donald Trump had him as his right-hand man for eons.
That'll be exactly the argument, right? He trusted him back then. And it's really important to keep in mind, the crime here is not hush money. It's not a crime to pay hush money. It's falsification. Can they tie Donald Trump to the logging of those payments as legal fees?
And if specifically the state is arguing that the reason it was illegal was because this was an unlawful, undisclosed campaign donation, Trump is going to argue, no, it was to protect my marriage. That's why I paid her the money. And I imagine that might be some of the focus of the defense as well at trial.
Jessica Roth, thanks so much. Elie Honig, Kara Scannell.